Welcome to our channel, where today we're diving deep into the fascinating world of Washington quarter dollar coins. You're going to want to stick around. We're revealing the top 5 most valuable Washington quarters, exploring both their value and the rich history behind them. First up, the 1983p Washington quarter dollar. At first glance, this might seem like an ordinary coin that you'd find in your change. But hidden beneath its worn surface lies an interesting story of economic struggle, minting challenges, and collector demand. Even in no fine or circulated condition, the 1983p Washington quarter has a story worth telling and a value that might surprise you. Let's start with the historical background of this coin. The Washington quarter was first introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th birthday of George Washington. It replaced the standing Liberty quarter and quickly became a permanent part of U.S. coinage. By 1983, the Washington quarter had already been in circulation for over 50 years, but the early 1980s brought significant changes in American economics and the minting process. The 1983p quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. That year, over 673 million quarters were minted at Philadelphia, which might make you think this coin is common and insignificant. However, 1983 was a unique time in U.S. minting history. Due to economic challenges and a tightening federal budget, the United States Mint made a critical decision. They did not release uncirculated mint sets to the public in 1982 and 1983. This meant that the only way for collectors to acquire these coins was through circulation coins that were already being used by the public, handled, and often worn down over time. As a result, finding a 1983p quarter in pristine condition became nearly impossible. Most examples available today are in well-worn or no-fine condition, having been in circulation for decades. This created a collector gap, a hole in the history of high-quality examples for this specific date and mint mark. While many 1983p quarters exist in worn condition, their historical importance and relative scarcity in better grades have drawn attention from collectors and dealers. In no fine condition, meaning heavily circulated, with major wear, faded details, and possibly small nicks or scratches, the 1983p Washington quarter typically carries a value just slightly above face value. As of now, a worn 1983p quarter in average circulated condition sells for around $0.35 to $1, depending on its overall eye appeal. However, this value is still significantly more than face value for a modern clad quarter, which usually holds no premium unless in brilliant condition. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. There is a well-known and highly sought-after variety of the 1983p quarter that features a reverse die break or double die, where part of the word e pluribus unum appears doubled. This type of error is rare, and collectors will pay significantly more for it, even in circulated grades. A circulated 1983p quarter with the double die reverse can fetch $100 to $300 and higher if it's well preserved. Another factor that makes 1983 quarters fascinating is the overall weakness in strike quality. Many 1983p quarters were poorly struck due to worn dies and production issues at the time. The metal composition of these coins, a copper nickel clad layered over a copper core, was standard, but the lack of uncirculated sets that year meant that mint state examples were never preserved in high numbers. In terms of design, the 1983p quarter features the familiar bust of George Washington on the obverse, designed by John Flanagan. His name appears in small letters at the base of Washington's neck. The reverse side shows an eagle with outstretched wings perched on a bundle of arrows, with olive branches beneath the design that remain unchanged from 1932 until the introduction of the 50-state quarters program in 1999. For many collectors, the appeal of the 1983p Washington quarter isn't in its rarity in low grades, it's in the challenge of finding one in high quality. Since there were no mint sets produced, the hunt for a clean, well-struck 1983p quarter becomes a serious quest. But even in its circulated, no fine condition, this coin tells a deeper story about how small decisions in minting policy can leave lasting effects on the hobby of coin collecting. Next up, The Washington quarter has been a staple of American coinage since 1932, originally introduced to honor the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. By 1984, the quarter still featured the iconic portrait of George Washington on the obverse, designed by John Flanagan. The reverse, with the eagle perched on a bundle of arrows and olive branches, was still in use, maintaining the classic look that millions of Americans had come to recognize. The 1984 D. Washington quarter was minted in Denver and features the D mint mark on the obverse, just to the right of Washington's ponytail. In that year, the Denver Mint produced over 546 million Washington quarters, meaning it was a high mintage coin, and most examples entered circulation and were used for daily transactions. This is why the majority of 1984 D quarters you find today are in circulated or no fine condition with visible wear, faded details, scratches, or even small dings. From a historical perspective, the early 1980s were a time when the U.S. Mint had fully transitioned from silver coinage to copper nickel-clad coins. The 1984 D quarter is composed of a core of pure copper with a surface clad of 75% copper and 25% nickel. It weighs 5.67 grams and has a diameter of 24.3 millimeters. While its metal value is less than its face value, the coin still holds historical interest for collectors, especially those completing a full set of Washington quarters by date and mint. Now, let's talk about value. In no fine condition meaning a coin that has been in circulation for a long time and shows heavy wear with low or flat details, the 1984 D Washington quarter is generally worth just face value, or around 25 cents. In some cases, coin dealers or collectors might pay slightly more, around 30 to 50 cents, if the coin has an interesting toning, clear mint mark, or is part of a bulk lot for collectors who enjoy assembling circulated sets. But in general, well-worn 1984 D quarters do not carry significant premium value. However, the story doesn't end there. Like many high-mintage modern coins, the 1984 D Washington quarter has become known not for its rarity in general, but for a few notable mint errors and strike issues. Some examples have been found with double dies or die cracks, where the die used to strike the coin was damaged or misaligned. These types of mint errors can turn an otherwise ordinary coin into something special. A 1984 D quarter with a dramatic error, even in circulated condition, can sell for $50 to over $200, depending on the nature and visibility of the error. There are also reports of 1984 D quarters struck slightly off-center or with planchet flaws. These types of errors are often discovered by collectors who pay close attention to every detail. It's a good reminder to check all your coins carefully. Even a no-fine condition coin can be valuable if it has a unique minting error. In high-grade mint state condition, which means uncirculated with sharp details and no signs of wear, a 1984 D quarter can be worth $10 to $50 or more, especially in Ms. 65 condition and certified by professional grading services like PCGs or NGC. But coins in no fine condition are far more common, and their value generally stays close to face value unless an error is present. Collectors who specialize in Washington quarters often look for one coin of each date and mint mark, even if it's in lower condition. That means your worn 1984 D quarter could still fill a hole in someone's collection. It's not a coin that will make you rich, but it does have historical value and represents an important part of American minting during the 1980s. So what have we learned? The 1984 D Washington quarter, although common and not particularly valuable, in no fine condition, still holds historical interest due to its place in the long-running Washington quarter series. With a high mintage, copper-nickel composition, and classic design, it's a great piece for beginner collectors and can still be worth looking through for potential minting errors or other anomalies. Always check for things like off-center strikes, die cracks, or doubled features. You never know what hidden treasure you might find in a coin that looks ordinary. Next up, the 1982 D quarter is more than just a coin. It's a small piece of American monetary history with a story to tell. let's begin with the background. The Washington quarter was introduced in 1932 to celebrate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. Designed by John Flanagan, the coin features a left-facing bust of George Washington on the obverse and an eagle perched on arrows and olive branches on the reverse. This design remained unchanged for decades until the start of the 50-state quarters program in 1999. In 1982, the mint was still using Flanagan's design, and the coins were struck with the familiar copper nickel-clad composition, pure copper core layered with an alloy of 75% copper and 25% nickel. The 1982 D Washington quarter was minted in Denver and bears the D mint mark to the right of Washington's ponytail. That year, the Denver Mint struck approximately 480 million Washington quarters, a high mintage by any standard. However, 1982 was a very unusual year in modern U.S. coinage history. Due to cost-cutting measures and a tight federal budget, the U.S. Mint made the decision not to produce official uncirculated mint sets in 1982 or 1983. This had a massive impact on coin collecting. Because mint sets are the main source of high-quality coins for collectors, the absence of those sets means that finding coins from these years in fine or better condition is more challenging. As a result, even coins with moderate detail, like those in fine condition, are more desirable to collectors than their face value might suggest. In fine condition, a 1982 D quarter shows full outlines of Washington's portrait with moderate wear on the high points such as the hair and cheekbone. The reverse still displays the eagle with visible, but slightly worn wings and talons. These are the types of coins collectors often seek when higher grades are difficult or expensive to find. So how much is the 1982 D quarter worth in fine condition today? In general, a fine-grade 1982 D Washington quarter can sell for around $0.5 to $1.5, depending on the overall eye appeal and market demand. That may not sound like a fortune, but it is several times the face value of the coin, and it reflects its collectability due to the absence of mint sets and the relatively lower survival of nice examples in circulation. But that's not the only reason collectors value the 1982 D quarter. This coin is also known for several mint-made varieties and striking issues. Some 1982 D quarters exhibit weak strikes or worn dies, resulting in coins with soft details. Others may have minor die cracks or doubling, particularly around the lettering. These features, while subtle, make individual coins more interesting to collectors and sometimes raise their value. There is also an interesting story about the No P quarter from 1982, which was struck at the Philadelphia Mint without a mint mark. While this error does not apply to the Denver minted 1982 D quarter, it adds to the overall collector attention to this year's coinage. That increased interest spills over to Denver coins as well, especially for collectors seeking a full 1982 date set in all grades. High-grade 1982 D quarters, those in uncirculated or mint state condition, can be worth significantly more. For example, a certified Ms. 65 example can sell for $20 to $40 or higher, especially if it has clean surfaces, strong luster, and a solid strike. In even higher grades like Ms. 66 or Ms. 67, the value can increase sharply due to rarity. But again, the lack of mint sets means that finding such coins in the wild is extremely rare. The 1982 D quarter also represents a key point in modern U.S. coin collecting. It's a year when the mint's decision unintentionally created long-term scarcity of well-preserved coins. That scarcity means that even a coin in fine condition has more interest and more value than similar coins from years when mint sets were widely available. For budget collectors or those building circulated date and mint sets, the 1982 D quarter in fine condition is a necessary and sometimes challenging piece to locate. So, while the 1982 D Washington quarter might not be rare in terms of mintage, its value comes from a combination of history, availability, and condition. It teaches us that coin value is not just about silver content or extremely low mintages. It's also about timing, preservation, and the stories behind the coins. This is why collectors appreciate even moderately worn coins like the 1980 to D quarter. They're part of a larger narrative of how coinage intersects with economic decisions, government policy, and the everyday lives of Americans. Next up, let's begin with its origin. The Washington quarter was introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. Designed by John Flanagan, the obverse features the familiar bust of George Washington, while the reverse depicts a majestic eagle with outstretched wings perched atop a bundle of arrows with olive branches below, symbolizing both strength and peace. This design remained largely unchanged for decades, including in the year 1991. The 1991 P Washington quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint and carries the P Mint mark on the obverse, just to the right of Washington's ponytail. That year, the Philadelphia Mint produced over 571 million quarters, making this a very common coin in terms of total mintage. These coins were minted using the standard copper-nickel-clad composition, with a pure copper core and an outer layer of copper and nickel alloy. The result was a durable coin meant to withstand decades of circulation. In terms of condition, a coin graded as fine shows moderate wear on the high points of the design. On the obverse, Washington's hair may appear smooth in parts, and facial features will be somewhat flattened. On the reverse, the eagle's feathers and claws may also show signs of wear, but the major design elements remain visible. Fine condition is considered a circulated grade, but it still preserves enough detail to be appealing to some collectors, especially for those assembling circulated sets of modern US coins. Now, let's talk about the value. Because of its high mintage and wide availability, the 1991 P quarter in fine condition is generally worth face value, or about $0.25. In some cases, depending on collector interest or the local coin market, it might be worth up to $0.35 or $0.5, especially if it has nice natural toning or strong eye appeal for its grade. However, this coin is not considered rare or especially valuable in circulated grades. What makes the 1991 P quarter more interesting to collectors are possible mint errors or varieties. While most of these coins were produced without issue, there have been reports of 1991 P quarters with off-center strikes, die cracks, and other striking anomalies. If you happen to find one of these coins with a noticeable error, for example, a quarter struck 10% off-center, or one with doubling on the date or lettering, its value could increase dramatically. A minor error could bring $10 to $50, while a major or dramatic error could be worth $100 or more, depending on demand and visibility of the flaw. There's also the broader historical context to consider. The early 1990s were the final years of the classic Washington quarter design before the launch of the 50-state quarters program in 1999. As a result, quarters like the 1991 P represent the tail end of an era, a time when coin designs remained unchanged for decades. For collectors looking to preserve this piece of minting history, even common dates like 1991 play an important role in building complete sets. In circulated examples of the 1991 P quarter, especially those graded Ms. 65 or higher, can fetch between $5 and $15, with coins in Ms. 67 and above going for significantly more due to their scarcity and high condition. But in fine condition, which is where most 1991 P quarters fall after decades in circulation, the value stays relatively low, unless an error is present. Still, this coin has more than just monetary value. It's a link to the history of U.S. coinage, the legacy of George Washington, and the design that Americans carried in their pockets for over 60 years. For collectors, each date and mint mark combination is a puzzle piece, and the 1991 P quarter is one such piece that completes the larger picture of numismatic history. So the next time you find a 1991 P quarter, take a closer look. Even in fine condition, it's a small but meaningful part of the story of American money. And who knows, it might just have an error or detail that makes it more valuable than you think. Coins like this teach us that sometimes the most ordinary looking items have extraordinary stories behind them. Next up, Let's begin with some background. The Washington quarter was first introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th birthday of George Washington. The obverse design, created by sculptor John Flanagan, features a bold portrait of Washington, facing left, while the reverse displays a heraldic eagle with outstretched wings perched on a bundle of arrows, with olive branches beneath. This iconic design was used on all Washington quarters from 1932 until 1998, making it one of the most familiar American coins. By the time 1966 rolled around, major changes had just been made to U.S. coinage. In 1965, the U.S. Mint removed silver from quarters due to rising silver prices and a nationwide coin shortage. Before that, quarters had been made of 90% silver. Starting in 1965, the Mint began producing quarters with a clad composition, a core of pure copper sandwiched between layers of a copper-nickel alloy. This new design gave the quarter a silvery appearance, but without the precious metal content. The 1966 Washington quarter, like all quarters minted from 1965 to 1967, has no mint mark regardless of where it was struck. This was done intentionally by the U.S. Mint to discourage coin hoarding during a period of coin shortages. So, whether the coin was minted in Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco, it has no visible mint mark on the obverse. This makes it a little more difficult to trace its origin, but it also adds to its historical uniqueness. The total mintage for 1966 Washington quarters was massive. Over 821 million coins were struck that year. As a result, these coins are very common, and most of them entered regular circulation. That's why today, the vast majority of 1966 quarters you'll find are in bad or heavily circulated condition. These coins usually show flattened details, worn rims, faint lettering, and may even have surface scratches, discoloration, or dents from decades of use. Now, let's talk about value. In bad condition, a 1966 Washington quarter is generally worth face value 25 cents. It contains no silver, and its metal value is less than its denomination. However, some coin dealers or bulk collectors might pay slightly more, around 30 to 50 cents, if the coin has specific interest as part of a date collection, or if someone is assembling a full circulated set of clad quarters from the 1960s. That said, there are a few things that can boost the value of a 1966 quarter even if it's worn. One of them is mint errors. Some 1966 quarters have been discovered with off-center strikes, double strikes, or planchet flaws. A quarter with a dramatic off-center strike, for example, can sell for $50 to $200, depending on how significant the error is. There are also minor errors, like die cracks or die breaks, which may raise the value slightly if they are clear and visible. These types of errors are rare, but they are worth checking for, even on worn coins. Another interesting aspect of the 1966 quarter is its role in the transition from silver to clad coinage. For that reason alone, some collectors like to include a 1966 example in their collections to represent this major change in U.S. coin history. Even in poor condition, a 1966 quarter can be an educational piece or a conversation starter about the evolution of American currency in circulated or mint state. 1966 quarters are much more valuable, especially those graded Ms. 65 or higher by professional grading companies like PCGs or NGC. A well-preserved coin with full luster and sharp details can be worth $10 to $25 or more, depending on the market. But coins in bad condition, the type that have been through years of pocket wear, vending machines, and loose change jars, generally do not attract high collector premiums unless they have something unusual or rare about them. Still, it's worth taking a closer look at any 1966 quarter you find. Even in bad shape, it's a reminder of a turning point in American coinage, a moment when the country moved away from silver and began producing the coins we still use today. And while your 1966 quarter might not make you rich, it can spark interest in coin collecting, teach history, and encourage you to search for more valuable finds.